If you were gonna like search terrifying paranormal poltergeist case, this has it all. It ticks all the fucking boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing this doesn't have is someone's head spinning around and puking out pea soup.
No. All right, folks, brace yourselves for a trip back in time to Enfield, England in the late 1970s. The stage is set for one of the most bone-chilling cases in paranormal history, the Enfield Poltergeist.
Lorraine Warren said that this was one of the most terrifying cases she had ever experienced in her entire career.
Yes.
And that's saying a lot.
We're diving headfirst into a nightmare that is so terrifying, it's been turned into numerous movies. A nightmare endured by an 11-year-old Janet Hodgson and her family.
I come to a graveyard.
Imagine this poor kid dealing with violent disturbances that could literally make your skin crawl. Furniture moving on its own, curtains turned into nooses, objects flying through the air like they've got their own mind, and while some menacing raspy voice echoes through the darkness.
Doesn't seem possible that that could be something that Janet is doing herself.
It sounds like the voice of a 70-year-old smoker.
It's really scary.
And it doesn't end there. This family was plunged into a relentless nightmare that felt like it would never end. And let me tell you, the images captured during this ordeal seemingly defy gravity.
The activity began 2 weeks after they brought the items into the house that belonged to the murderer of the girl across the way.
Yes.
It's like, that's really important evidence and information. And I feel like not a lot of people are talking about that.
No, it kind of gets overlooked.
This isn't just another ghost story. This is a real-life horror story, immortalized in the chilling photographs with dozens of eyewitnesses and extensive documentation that still sends chills down our spines today.
Let me hear you say my name.
This is a stark reminder that sometimes the most ordinary places can become a playground for unimaginable terror.
No.
But before we start, make sure you head over to my Patreon at Jack Osbourne, become a member of my community. There's extra footage from the episode, there's behind the scenes pictures, we're gonna be dropping merch, and there's a whole bunch more that we're gonna be rolling out over the next few months. Like clip submissions, that's when you send in your paranormal evidence and we review it. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and now I present the most haunted, the Enfield Poltergeist.
All right, well, welcome to Ghosts and Grit. I am Jack Osbourne.
I'm Cindy Kaza.
So we're changing things up a little bit here on Ghosts and Grit. We're going to be doing deep dives into some of the most famous and bone-chilling paranormal cases that have been documented over the years. Some of our cases will be of recent events, some going back to the 1800s. The case we're going to be diving into today is the infamous Enfield Poltergeist case.
This case is freaky.
This case is really freaky, and it's also very, very famous.
I mean, it should be famous because I think it's like one of the most terrifying paranormal cases of all time. I mean, The Exorcist came out in 1973, right? So after that, it's every mother's nightmare that their young daughter could be possessed by this evil demonic spirit. And then we have this case. So I can only imagine what Mrs. Hodgson was thinking or feeling at the time. It's terrifying.
I mean, we might as well just start listing off the things that happened in this case.
Go for it.
It was a family. They lived in a council house in Enfield, England, which is like a borough of London. There was 4 children, a single mother, and all of a sudden, the family began to get plagued by very intense poltergeist activity.
Right.
We're talking objects being thrown, furniture being moved,
People being strangled by curtains.
people being strangled by curtains, hot marbles. They were described as hot. They were being thrown, and then when they were thrown, they would land and they wouldn't roll, which is really...
That's really crazy.
Yeah, very crazy.
Doesn't make sense.
No, not at all. They're like, that literally defies physics. There was also the possession/channeling that occurred with Janet, who was 12 years old. A strange voice was coming from her mouth, They don't understand it. They had experts come in. We'll do a deep dive into that part of it, but it was very weird. There's footage of it. This case is actually one of the most heavily documented paranormal cases. There was 30 eyewitnesses to these events, over 1,800 hours of actual documentation.
Which is very thorough, right?
Very. And ultimately what made this case so famous was that the Warrens turned up and they partook in investigating and figuring out what the fuck is going on.
Lorraine Warren said that this was one of the most terrifying cases she had ever experienced in her entire career, as far as I understand.
Yes.
And that's saying a lot.
It has all the keywords. This is like, if you were going to like search, terrifying paranormal poltergeist case, this has it all. It ticks all the fucking boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing this doesn't have is someone's head spinning around and puking out pea soup.
Right. I mean, it's true. And I think for me, the real kicker is like the 30 eyewitnesses, 30 plus. If all of these people are experiencing things happening in this house, you can't deny that.
And we should probably be clear that it wasn't just paranormal investigators.
No, right.
It was police. It was journalists. It was other family members, neighbors. A lot of people were called in to try and figure out what the fuck was going on.
Right.
I want to acknowledge the main reason why we're jumping into this. In 2023, the photojournalist that was called in from a local British tabloid, he was tasked with covering this event, seeing if it was bunk or not, like what's going on here. Supposedly, he said that the pictures were fake, the girl was jumping, she wasn't really being thrown through the air. Well, he came out in 2023 to set the record straight and stated that he never actually said they were faked, and he believed them all to be real and true.
Oh, wow. So somebody said that he said they were faked, but he
Yes.
actually did not say that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal because it turns all of those ideas on their head, right? That people are saying, well, he said this. It's like, he was there.
Yeah, because that was ultimately that was the holdout for this case. Everyone said, oh, well, the journalist who was there said this was all bullshit. But he never said that.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, I could see why a journalist would say that if they were afraid that they would lose their credibility going forward.
Big time.
And it's like maybe the risk is not so high now for him to come out and say, hey, actually, this did happen. Because why didn't he come out before and say, no, I didn't say that?
And let's also clarify, this was in the 70s, 1977. There was still journalistic integrity back then. Journalists didn't just make shit up for the sake of making shit up. Because as you said, their career was legitimately on the line if they fuck up. This is a story for me that really grasps my imagination. And I can't seem to shake it off because it is so fucked up.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, look, it's like anytime you have kids that are channeling voices and flying through the room, and it's the making of like the worst horror movie ever.
Yeah, and it's real. Hey everyone, it's Jack Osbourne here. Now, Ghosts and Grit is sponsored by ButcherBox. ButcherBox might be the best thing to happen to me in a very long time. So there's something about getting a box of customized meat delivered to my door that just brings joy to my life and my girls. Now, my daughter, Andy, pretty much only eats steak, and my other daughter is a pescatarian, so meat and seafood is like the backbone of our house. ButcherBox has made that so much easier for me. The meat is delivered right to my door, and when I'm in an even tighter time crunch, ButcherBox has fully cooked meals as options. There are no more excuses when you can put dinner on the table in 15 minutes. Eat better this year with the best meat and seafood on the planet. That is no lie. Right now, ButcherBox is offering new users 2 pounds of ground beef in every box for the lifetime of their subscription. Plus, get $20 off your first order by going to butcherbox.com/ghosts and enter the code GHOSTS at checkout. This expires April 30th, 2024. Hey, it's Jack Osbourne here, and this episode of Ghosts and Grit is sponsored by ZocDoc. Look, life is about compromise. We all know that there are things in life you have to compromise on, but when it comes to your health, there should be no compromise. Don't stay with the doctor that barely listens to you just because they're available when you need them. You deserve better, and the solution is ZocDoc.com. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare highly rated in-network doctors near you and instantly book appointments with them online. I did it, I searched, and it was too damn easy. There are more options than you know what to do with, so guess what? No more compromising. I use ZocDoc, and so should you. Go to ZocDoc.com/GG and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/GG. ZocDoc.com/GG. So, I guess at that, let's dive into some of the facts about this.
Okay.
All right, so the Hodgson household is located in Enfield, England. The story centers around a 1920s three-bedroom house. The family is made up of 47-year-old Peggy. She was a divorcee. She had 4 kids. Margaret was 13, Janet was 12, John 11, and Billy 7. And she was a single mom.
It's hard.
It's very hard. London in the 70s, it wasn't always... It's not the happiest, brightest place on planet Earth. So, the haunting. It went on for about 2 years, and it was relatively consistent in that 2-year period. And as you stated earlier, there were 30 eyewitnesses over that 2-year period, and it came from members of the press, to the police, to paranormal investigators, to photographers. I mean, there was a lot of people that came through this house to see what was going on.
Right.
And many of them had firsthand accounts and experiences. Mm-hmm. It got so bad that they started reaching out to paranormal investigators, and that led them to contacting the Warrens, and the Warrens coming out to investigate. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of substance to this. Now, some of the gory details. Furniture was rearranged with violent intent. Objects were hurled through the air, and flames spontaneously erupted. A lot of people say that that showcases some demonic entity or power, whatever. Now, what I want to know is, why them? Why that house? And what possibly could have gone on there to invite this entity in? Because as this story unfolds, what was discovered as far as who this spirit could be, at face value, it doesn't
really make sense.
Doesn't
right?
add up.
It's like, why is it this guy? What's the point?
Yes. So what do you think about this case, based on the facts?
Well, I think it's really important to talk about the fact that there was a man who lived across the way who murdered his daughter. The Hodgson family had items in their house from the murderer's house across the way. They had curtains, they had a chair, they had a cabinet, and Mrs. Hodgson actually said that the activity began about 2 weeks after they brought the items into their home.
So do you believe that they brought in haunted objects into their house?
It's possible, because these objects contain energy. They contain psychic imprinting. And then there's apparently a man who's, after the young daughter, Janet. So who's to say it's not this guy that's in the house?
What experiences have you had with haunted objects?
Well, in all the paranormal investigations that I've done, I think I could say in probably 90% of them, I've done something called psychometry. So that's when you touch an object and you read the energetic imprint or memory left behind on the object, right? And it's really, really effective using that technique, because you can see things that have happened in the past. You can see things that have happened to the family in the present that are connected to the object. And they hold energy. These objects hold energy. And because they brought these objects in so quickly after this girl was murdered by her father, I have to say, there probably was a lot of imprinting on those objects.
Here's a thought. What if, so the father that killed his daughter across the street, right? What if that same entity, what
if it possessed the father?
What if the father was possessed?
That's a really interesting point, because Mrs. Hodgson said the activity first began about 2 weeks after they brought the items into the home. And then all of a sudden there's this male presence haunting the family and going after Janet. I wonder how old the girl was that got murdered by her dad.
She was 5 or 6.
Oh, she was really little. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. But still, I mean, that's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
Because it really doesn't make sense. Why is the owner, the old owner of the home haunting them that way?
That's what doesn't add up because, and we'll get to it, when you see an interview with Janet, she was channeling this entity who went by the name of Bill. And he said he died in a chair in the downstairs living room and had some kind of like heart embolism or something. Like an old man dying in a chair doesn't really strike me as, you know, a nefarious demonic entity that's going to start throwing people around.
And you know, anytime we have activity like this, and then there's an agent who, let's call Janet the agent, right? The agent is the focus, the person that could be emitting the PK energy, and also the person who could be very open to the spirit world that's calling in the spirits. In my opinion, for there to be poltergeist activity, there has to be this PK energy and also a connection to the spirit world. Bill could have been there, but do I think that Bill is the one responsible for this really, really aggressive behavior? It doesn't feel right to me. It feels like there's something much darker happening there.
Yes, that's taking on the persona of Bill.
Right.
Because at least in my experience with investigating, I think I've come across cases like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's smart for a spirit to do that because if you don't know what you're dealing with, how can you remove it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can try, but it helps if you know exactly what you're dealing with.
Yeah, and the darker things never present with what they really are.
Right. Yeah.
So let's dive into some of the supernatural and unexplained about this case. So it started with Peggy hearing noises in Margaret and Janet's room in 1977. She later would discover the girls being totally freaked out because furniture was moving around in their bedroom and like moving towards them. They ended up going to police and trying to get some help. They went to their neighbors. They reached out to whoever they could to be like, what the hell's going on? In addition to furniture moving, the girls would wake up in the night and hear the knocking. The quintessential paranormal, knocking. So the family ends up experiencing more like furniture overturning. Cups would spontaneously fill with water. Fires started without apparent cause, and a curtain attempted to strangle Janet.
Yeah, and it's the curtain that came from the murderer's house.
And wasn't there also something about marbles that would like materialize out of the curtain?
Yeah, they would. So it's called apportation.
Okay.
So in the world of mediumship, we call it apportation. Things apporting from the sky, right? It can happen. They just materialize out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Or from the spirit world, right?
But it gets way, way creepier. So there's two pieces of evidence that make this case exceptionally legendary. The first is a photo of Janet flying through the air.
Right.
Allegedly, she was tossed out of bed by a spirit. The second piece of evidence is from a BBC documentary that investigated the house and the hauntings while they were still going on. In this footage, Janet appears to be emitting some kind of disembodied voice from her own mouth. And it is the freakiest, weirdest, twistedest fucking thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I think the only thing we can do right now is just play this clip. In this documentary, they sat down and interviewed Janet and her sister Margaret. It's shot sometime in the 70s, and you will see Janet speaking in this very strange voice, but her mouth is not moving. All right, so this is Margaret.
There just now?
Very clear this is the 70s. I mean,
I do.
now watch. Watch Janet. Look, her hand's in front of her
Is
face.
anybody there?
She moves it. Now, if you see,
No. Who's there?
Doctor.
Doctor Who?
It's so scary
it's so scary.
because it doesn't even seem, it's so deep, and it doesn't seem possible that could be something that Janet is doing herself.
It
or
sounds
making
like
up.
the voice of a 70-year-old
It's-
smoker.
And it's so deep. It's crazy. It's really scary.
Yeah.
I mean, that's clearly a man's voice, in my opinion.
Yes.
It could be something demonic that's mimicking a man. So we have to get that out there too. But it is definitely not Janet.
No.
There's no way.
And they brought in a ventriloquist expert to critique, to watch, that was one of the witnesses.
Mm-hmm.
And they determined that Janet was not using ventriloquism and she was not trained in it, and this was a very strange phenomenon. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is that when they asked Janet, where's this voice coming from, she described that it was coming from the back of her neck. So not her throat, not her mouth, the back of her neck.
What could be happening in this clip is that there's a spirit that's like super, super close to Janet that's literally using her voice box to communicate. It's called trance mediumship. So there are different like levels of trance. When you're in a really deep trance, you know, when a medium's in a really deep state of trance, they usually can't remember a lot of the things that have occurred. Mm-hmm. But in a state like maybe this, there's some recollection. You're not like totally out of control.
So she's kind of half in, half out.
Yeah.
I've seen stuff with trances. I've seen stuff with people who are channeling. Mm-hmm. But then you also hear stories of possession.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, it's Jack Osbourne. It's time for one of my favorite sponsors, Cozy Earth. Look, Mother's Day is right around the corner, and it's about time all the mums out there get the luxury they deserve. There's nothing better than Cozy Earth bedding. It's the best gift out there. Cozy Earth sheets are incredibly soft, and they temperature regulate for those of you who sleep a little too hot or too cold. Now, my wife, Ari, loves these sheets. She just ordered a new color. It's sage, and it looks actually really good in our room. She's obsessed with earth tones, so Cozy Earth provides a lot of earth tone colors. This Mother's Day, treat mom to the luxury she deserves with Cozy Earth bedding and sleepwear, and prioritize her self-care and sleep health. She deserves it. Don't forget to use my promo code GHOSTS at the checkout for 35% off at CozyEarth.com. After placing your order, select podcast in the survey and select my show in the drop-down menu that follows. Thanks, guys.
So the Daily Mirror comes to the house to start documenting this stuff, to go, okay, what's going on here?
Right.
They kind of led up the investigation. They brought in a guy by the name of Maurice Grosse, who's like a British version of the Warrens. Mm-hmm. He was involved in an organization called the Society of Psychical Research, and they spent a long time documenting. Mm-hmm. Coincidentally, a photographer who captured the famous clips of the girls like levitating in their bedroom or being thrown out of their bed, when he entered the house, one of the first things that happened was that a Lego brick hit him in the face out of nowhere. He was like he said he was taking a photo, and all of a sudden he just got hit in the face with a Lego brick.
You can't make that up.
No. And he was a non-believer.
Total skeptic, right?
Total skeptic. He was like, nope, this isn't real.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's like you have somebody that comes in that's a total skeptic. The spirit world is like, we got to do something really extreme so this person gets that we're really here.
Yeah.
We're going to throw a Lego at his face.
Yeah. So they instantly started experiencing things from doors and drawers opening on their own, spontaneous movement of objects like teaspoons and lids, random combustion of objects. A heavy green sofa rose about 4 feet in the air, flipped over backwards, and crashed upside down on the floor.
That takes a lot of energy.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say
a lot of energy.
Yeah, I was going to say, what kind of forces do you think would be at play with that?
Personally, I think it would have to be like all of the things. You have to have PK energy from the agents. You have to have psychic imprinting or something going on in the house. It could be residual psychic energy from fighting in the family too. Mm-hmm. Because when there's stress in the family, it builds up the energy, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to have a spirit. That's my thought on extreme poltergeist activity, because some people will say, oh, it's just PK energy, it's just coming from the agent, it's just psychic energy, but I disagree. I think that there's definitely a ghost component to that.
If someone told me this, I'd be like, okay, who stumbled into the paranormal section at the bookstore and just started like making up things they saw in Harry Potter or something? I don't know. Like, it just feels too fanciful. Like I don't get it. But they witnessed it. As we've been saying all along, there's too many fucking witnesses to this thing.
Yeah. I mean, all of the witnesses for me is just like that really makes me believe that something was really going on. It's not that I wouldn't believe without the witnesses, but again, if you're not there, it's hard to say. You have to say allegedly, but
Yes.
30 plus eyewitnesses, it's a lot of people who saw something going on in this house that they couldn't explain. Even people that were totally skeptical.
The kicker with this case, there is 1,800 hours of evidence.
That's a lot of evidence.
That's a hell of a lot of evidence. I don't know if I've ever worked on a case and collected 1,800 hours of evidence. Should we talk about the pictures?
Sure.
All right, so these photos are from Graham Morris. He was the photojournalist that was sent to cover this story for a British tabloid. Now, the camera was set up with like a motion-activated sensor. So think of like a trail cam that hunters use. Like when movement triggers it, it'll take a photo.
Right.
So this shot right here is allegedly of Janet being flung out of her bed. You see in the background, her little brother is sleeping in the bed next to her. I don't know what the fuck that is next to him. I don't know if it's a toy or a doll.
It's really weird.
It's definitely not a person because the face looks flat.
Yeah, it's really weird.
But yeah, look at the terror on her face.
It's really scary. Because she was, for lack of a better word, possessed so many times or in trance from these entities. Like, I really do believe that something could have possessed her to do this.
Yes.
And she, probably didn't even remember doing it or wasn't aware of it.
No. Here's another photo. It's same thing, same location, but Janet is flying out of the bed. You see her sister now in the bed next to her, clearly startled, like, what the hell's going on? And I believe this is her mother sat in the room as well, witnessing it. Her mother's hands are up, almost looks as if she's about to try and catch her. The mom's trying to do something like, let me help. It looks like more terror in her face.
She does not look like herself. When she said that she could feel the voice entering from the back of her neck, right? I just wonder if even at night she could feel this thing coming and she's trying to get away from it. I mean, there's a lot of things that it could be, but I don't think that this is fabricated.
Yeah, I mean, even if she had jumped off the bed, that's still pretty freaking high off the bed. And also, too, if she had jumped off the end of the bed and wasn't launched off her bed, wouldn't there be, like, footprints in the bed?
Oh, that's
from where
a good
she
point,
jumped?
Jack. That's a really good point.
There's nothing indicating
there.
that her feet... Because this is like look, you can see the duvet is tucked in, so there would be some kind of indent left. All right, here's another shot. It looks like it's almost the same...
The same night.
But
look
it's
at her
not.
sister, though. Look at her sister. Looks
Her
terrified.
sister is-
like completely terrified.
Leg in the air and hand, screaming.
Wait, look at the sister again.
Yeah.
Wait, go to this one. The sister
Look.
is so scared.
The sister's fists are clenched in this final one, screaming. And then once again, you have Janet about 4 feet in the air from the bottom of her feet to the floor.
I mean, look, her sister in a couple of these photos looks absolutely terrified. So if this were something that they had planned on doing, I don't think that would be the case. This is genuine fear that we're seeing in her sister's face, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, a number of things could be happening. If Janet, is in this entranced state and she's aggressive and she's flying through the air, then the sister could be feeling that. You can feel that energy. I mean, they've had these experiences together where things have been flying around the room, right? Usually before something like this would happen, there might be a knock, there might be a movement of an object. So a lot of times with the PK energy, you have all of these things happening like in connection with one another. Yeah.
What do you think it physically feels like to have some kind of entity take over your body or enter your body or manipulate you in some way?
It's got to be terrifying because you have zero control. If you're not looking to do this, some people actually want to be trance mediums and they invite it in. But if that's not the case, then it's terrifying because you have some unseen energy coming so close to your body, you lose control. Sometimes people even like lose time. They don't remember anything that's happened. So imagine that. You suddenly go to sleep, quote unquote, and you wake up in a different part of the room and you're like, how the hell did I get here? You know, like what's going on? The level of trance, in my opinion, would have to be really, really intense, really deep. Because if it's sleep paralysis, she wouldn't be moving from the bed, right? That wouldn't be happening. If it were a light trance, she would be able to control herself more. She would have agency, a little bit more agency, right? And so I've seen physical trance before in the UK. So physical trance is one of the deepest forms of trance where the medium was literally like tied to the chair, feet tied, mouth gagged, eyes, totally blindfolded. And we were all in this room. And mind you, the room was like really, really dark. So we couldn't see everything. But I was with a lot of people that I trust that I was studying with in the UK. And voices were coming out of this medium's mouth, like multiple voices, super loud. There's like no way that this was coming. It was the guy, right? It was like something coming through him. And objects could fly around in the room. So in physical trance, like people believe that there's something called ectoplasm that comes out of the body of the medium, and that ectoplasm can move things, right? So in this deep state of physical trance, all of these things are possible, allegedly. I have not seen it, all of those things all at the same time, but I have definitely heard a medium in that deep state of trance speaking in a voice that wasn't his own. And it was shocking. This case has all of the ingredients for like one of the worst poltergeist hauntings of all time, because there's trauma in the family. The father left, everybody's traumatized. There's, stress in the home. There's a young girl. So a lot of times most people believe that in order for there to be a poltergeist haunting, right? That there has to be like a younger prepubescent teen or somebody going through puberty.
Why do you think that is?
I don't think, I can't say definitively. What I will say is this, is that in general, like children are way more open. Way more open because they're more in presence. They're not thinking about what do I have to do tomorrow? What happened yesterday? They're just, present. They're in imagination. And when I say imagination, I don't mean that they're imagining the spirit world, but they're just in this place where anything's kind of possible.
Yes.
Right? So they're more open to it. They're not talking themselves out of the experiences, right? I almost wonder if like when they start to move into this prepubescent stage or into the hormonal stage, if it snaps them out of that, like they're in between. It's like this in between space, right? And I don't know, Jack. Like, I don't know. I can't say for sure, but hormones can also disrupt your emotions. They can disrupt your energy. They can
brainwaves.
All the things. But I think too, there are cases of poltergeist activity happening when, there isn't an agent that's going through puberty in the house, right? It's like if you go to this location now and people go there and still investigate, people see things flying around. What's that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you think that the Enfield case is a manifestation, or do you think it's like a portal just pumping in activity?
I think it's both. That's the thing. Because the manifestation, if we talk about a manifestation, we can be talking about Janet's psychic energy. We can be talking about the family building up the energy. They're manifesting this like psychokinetic energy, right?
Yeah.
And then because she's so open, I feel like there probably was, and most likely an opening or a portal created where spirits can come in. And when you have those two things happening at the same time, that's where we get these big things. That's when these big things happen.
Yeah. Okay. We touched on this earlier But something that I learned through investigating is that spirits don't always present themselves as who or what they really are.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that stood out to me really clearly was this whole the bill side of this. Like, okay, so this guy who was just an old dude who died in that house is now some evil,
Right.
highly powerful
Right.
spirit that is tormenting young girls.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. It
No.
doesn't make sense to me, especially since the mother said, Mrs. Hodgson said, the activity began 2 weeks after they brought the items into the house that belonged to the murderer of the girl across the way.
Yes.
It's like, that's really important evidence and
Mhm.
information. And I feel like not a lot of people are talking about that.
No, it kind of gets overlooked.
It's huge. When I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's a huge piece of information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, wrapping this up, the Hodgsons today, the mother passed away in 2003. She actually remained in the house until she died,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Crazy.
bonkers.
Like what? I mean, well, maybe she didn't have enough money to move.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing.
That is a very real thing. Janet left home at 16 and married very early.
Mm-hmm.
Janet and Margaret have made several television appearances over the years. Most famously, their story was depicted in Conjuring 2. During the filming of Conjuring 2, Janet and Margaret made a visit to the set, and Lorraine Warren was there. And so it was the first time they reunited in 30-something years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. There's footage too of them seeing each other for the first time,
Yeah.
and I've seen that.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
Well, I have to say, it's really important a role of the medium too is to show up for the people having the experiences to let them know they're not going crazy,
Mhm.
right? Like in all of the investigations that I've done, I found the most rewarding part for me is to see the experiencers feeling relieved that they weren't going crazy.
Yeah.
That I could see what they were seeing or experiencing.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's huge.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's having your experiences affirmed,
yeah.
especially ones that are perceived as non-believable and
Yeah.
impossible.
Yeah.
But I've had stuff that I'm like, no, that was real.
Yeah.
I didn't make this up. I'm not playing Dungeons and Dragons here. This shit is real that's happened to me.
Yeah.
Not saying every paranormal case is,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's personally speaking, it's very reassuring
Mhm.
if someone can, corroborate. And as far as this case goes, where do you lie with it?
Where do I lie with it? I definitely think there is a lot of paranormal activity happening in the home. I believe the poltergeist activity is real. Way too many eyewitnesses, 30 plus eyewitnesses. That's a lot. I really think that Janet was the agent. I think that she was super open and that there were definitely spirits that were using her, right? And I think...
So you think it was more than one spirit?
I do. Personally, I think it was more than one spirit. I don't think it was just one. That doesn't make sense to me. Was Bill there? Maybe Bill was there. And I definitely know there's a connection, I really feel, to the house where the guy murdered his kid. So that would be 2. And who's to say there weren't more?
Yeah.
And I think when people don't understand that that's a possibility, they link everything to one spirit without understanding that there can be multiple spirits all working together. Yeah.
Yeah, I concur. All right, well, thank you, listeners and viewers, for hanging out with us while we broke this very compelling paranormal case down. Please make sure you subscribe, follow all of the social media things, turn your notifications on. There's more episodes coming. Cindy and I are going to break down a load more very well-known paranormal cases, so I hope you enjoy it. We're changing things up a little bit here on Ghosts and Grit, so make sure you tune in. And for our Patreon listeners, stick around because we've got more for you.
As we come out of the shadows of the Enfield nightmare, we're left with a bone-chilling reminder of just how powerful the other side can be. The tale of the Enfield Poltergeist It's something that you can't just shake off. No, it's like a haunting melody that sticks with you and lingers, reminding you that the world we live in is far, far stranger and more terrifying than we could have ever imagined. Stay safe, and see you next time.